The question here says, explain whether there is a link between marginal revenue, product of labor, and the wage rate in an occupation, right? So let's quickly jump to the final part where, where we were, right? Now, if you remember, I said that there's a market demand for labor and there's a firm demand for labor. Now, what's the difference between market demand and, okay, that's about the supply. Okay, let me answer that for you. That's a good question, Nubin. So let's first understand what happens on the demand level, and then we'll come to the supply level, right? So talking about the demand level, right? There is firm demand for labor, which means what is the demand for, let's say, teachers at Mega Lecture, right? What's the demand for teachers at Mega Lecture? Mega Lecture is one online teaching platform, right? But teachers are not only hired by Mega Lectures. Teachers are hired by schools, teachers are hired by academies and all these other educational institutes, as we know, right? Now, if we add up the demand for teachers by all these institutes, then that will give us the market demand for teachers. Are you getting me? Right? So what you need to remember in this case is, just a second, right? So when you add up the demand for any occupation, in this case, we're talking about teachers. So if you add the demand for a certain occupation by all the firms in the market, that will give you the market demand, right? Okay. Now let's assume, for the sake of simplicity, again, I'm repeating this again and again, for the sake of simplicity, I'm assuming that there are only two firms that hire a certain type of occupation. This is a very unrealistic assumption to make, right? Because in real life, we see couple of firms, right? I mean, a lot of firms. If you think about teachers, I mean, there will be hundreds of schools in any country, right? But why are we not making that assumption? Because why can't we have that? Because obviously then it will be difficult to show on one graph, right? So for the sake of simplicity, we are assuming, right, that there are only two companies or firms that hire a certain type of labor, right? Now, yesterday we were taking that example of uh, clothing factory, like any factory that manufactures clothes, right? So we took the example of two clothing brands, two big names, right? So let's say Levi's and Tommy Hilfiger, right? So let's say these are the only two businesses that want to hire production workers who makes clothes, right? T-shirts, jeans, could be anything, right? And the second brand we assumed was to be Tommy Hilfiger, right? So these are the two brands. Okay. Now on the y-axis, you have to be careful with the labeling, right? Because obviously when you are drawing graph on an exam, there will be marks associated with correct labeling of the graph, right? Now on the y-axis, we have marginal revenue, product of labor, right? So on the y-axis, we have marginal revenue, product of labor, which means how much additional revenue is each unit of labor generating for the company. What is marginal revenue? Product of labor. That's basically a measure of additional revenue that each unit of labor is generating for the company. Yes or no? Right? Easy? Okay. Now we do know that the demand curve for labor is downward sloping. Demand curve for labor is downward sloping, right? Now, when we look at this demand curve, what will this show us? This will show us different points, which will show the revenue that each additional unit of labor is generating for the business, right? How much additional revenue is each unit of labor generating for the business, right? Now think about this. So let's say the first guy that Levi's hires, that person can make goods worth, could be, let's say, $1,000. So the first production worker that Levi's company hires can generate a revenue of $1,000 in terms of, when you will sell off those shirts, t-shirts, whatever that person is producing, the company will generate a revenue of $1,000. Got it? Okay. Now the second guy Levi's hires can generate a revenue of, let's say, $900, right? And similarly, so on and so forth. I'll just quickly fill this information and move forward, right? The third guy that Levi's is hiring can generate a revenue of $800. And similarly, the fourth guy, let's say, there is a decrease of $100 for each additional worker that you hire. The fourth guy is generating a revenue of 700. The fifth guy is generating a revenue of 600, and so on and so forth, right? Easy. Is there any confusion so far? Anything that's confusing, anything that you want to ask me, right? Okay. Now, this being said, this is what the firm demand for labor is. This is what the firm demand for labor is, students. Don't get confused. This is not the market demand, because it clearly says Levi's on top, which basically means that how many units of labor would this company, Levi's, want to hire at different wage rates. So now, just to be more clear and be more specific before we move forward, yeah, this is revision of yesterday. Yes, Amna, right? Okay, now if the wage rate in the market, students, if the wage rate in the market is $1,000, right, then Levi's will hire only one person. Why? Because it's only the first employee that can generate revenue worth 1,000. Even then, the company is not making any profit. Amna, do you remember we talked about this? So even if you hire someone at 1,000 wage rate and the person is just generating enough revenue as much the wage you are paying to that person, right? So there is no revenue, no, sorry, there's no profit for the company, right? Because revenue that this person generates for your company is exactly the same as much the wage that you pay to him, right? So no profit, no loss, but at least there's no loss, right? And you will only hire the first person. Why would you not want to hire the second guy? Because second guy is making a revenue of $900, and that is less than the wage that you will have to pay. If the wage is 1,000, what exactly is the wage? We are coming to it, right? What exactly is the wage, students? We are coming to it. Any confusion so far? Anything that's not clear, right? Good. Okay, now let's keep moving forward. Okay, now similarly, we will add, some labels over here. So let's say A, B, C, D, E, and F, right? So the first guy for Tommy, let's say, generates a revenue of $900. And then similarly, so on and so forth, right? The first employee that Tommy Hilfiger hires generates a revenue of 900 for the company. The second guy that you hire generates a revenue of, let's say, $800, and so on and so forth, right? Are we following this? Okay, the second guy is generating a revenue of $800. The third guy is generating a revenue of $700, and so on and so forth. Is everyone clear? Right? 700, then you have 600, 500, right? 600 revenues generated by the fourth guy, and there's just, let's say, one more. The fifth guy generates a revenue of $500. Okay, now let's just assume that this doesn't exist. Okay, now think about this. Mubin, this is where it becomes a little tricky. Now, again, I'm repeating the assumption. There are two companies in the market, and these are the only two companies, obviously. So the market is made up of these two companies, right? So if these are the only two companies that want to hire production workers who manufacture t-shirts or jeans or whatever you want to assume, then the market demand for clothing production workers, then the market demand for clothing production workers would only be made up from these two firms' demand for labor, because there are only these two firms that hire this type of labor. Easy, right? But obviously, this is an unrealistic assumption, as I've told a couple of times, because in real life, in real market, there are a couple of firms that produce same product. Like if you think of teachers, there are so many hundreds of schools in Pakistan that want to hire teachers and so on, right? But for the sake of simplicity, we are assuming that there are only two firms. Okay, now moving forward, students, now we are making the market demand for labor. Now on the right, this orange graph will show you the market demand for labor, which means that what's the total demand for production workers in the market demand for labor, right? Now, what you have to do, you have to just add up the individual firm's demand to determine the market demand. I repeat, you just need to add up the individual firm's demand for labor to find out the market demand for labor. Okay, now have a look at this. It will again be a downward sloping curve. It will again be a downward sloping curve like this. Okay, now think about this. If the wage rate is 1,000, now this is for you, Mubin, because we have discussed it yesterday. Amna was there. So if the wage rate in the market is 1,000, how many units of labor will the market want to hire? If the wage rate in the market is $1,000, how many units of labor or how many people, in simple words, would the market want to hire, right? Only one, and Levi's would be that one, right? Exactly. So at the wage rate of 1,000, you are only willing to hire one person. Now, similarly, if the wage rate is $900, how many units of, or how many people would the market want to hire? One unit would be hired by Tommy and two units would be hired by Levi's. Now, don't get confused. Why is Levi's hiring two people? Because the first guy is already generating a revenue of 1,000. So that guy is already profitable for Levi's. Yes or no? But he will also hire the second person as well, because again, his wage is the same as much as his revenue. His wage is the same as much as his revenue. Students, are you following me or not? Right? So at the wage rate of $900, Mubin, did you get this part? So at the wage rate of $900, Levi's would be willing to hire two people. Why? Because the first guy generates a revenue of 1,000, which is greater than the wage that's being paid. And the second guy also generates a revenue of $900, which is just equivalent to the wage that you're paying to him, right? Yeah. Right. So is the first part clear, Mubin? So if the wage rate in the market, now we're looking at the wages. Now have a look at this. When we are constructing the market demand for labor, we are looking at what wage rate, or put it like this, at a certain wage rate, how many units of labor will the market want to hire? When we are looking at the market demand for labor, what we're looking at is that at certain wage rates, how much quantity of labor would the market want to hire? And market is sum of these two companies. Market is sum of Levi's plus Tommy, right? Because these are the two firms in the market. Now, if the wage rate, let's assume if the wage rate prevailing in the market is $1,000, then Levi's would only want to hire one person, but Tommy would not want to hire anyone. Why? Because the highest revenue that the first guy at Tommy generates is only 900. So at $1,000 of wage rate, only Levi's would want to hire one person. Simple, easy. Okay. If the wage rate is $900, now think about this. Tommy would want to hire one person because their first employee generates a revenue of 900. And Levi's would want to hire two people. Levi's would want to hire two people. Why? Exactly. So that makes a total of three, right? Levi's would want to hire two people because the first guy is already generating a revenue of $1,000 for them, which is greater than 900. And the second guy is also generating a revenue of how much? $900, which is equivalent to the wage that you're paying that person, right? Now, at the wage rate of $800, Tommy wants to hire two people and Levi's want to hire three people. So 2 plus 3 gives you how much? 5. So the total demand in the market, the total demand for labor in the market, if the wage rate is $800, would be 5 units of labor. Are you getting me? That would be 5 units of labor. Easy. We good on this, right? Okay. Then if the wage rate in the market is $700, $700, Tommy wants to hire 3 people and Levi's wants to hire 4 people. So 4 plus 3 is 7, right? So on and so forth. So this demand curve that we have constructed on the left, so let me erase that, right? So this demand curve that we have constructed on the left in orange, that is your market demand. That is your market demand for labor. This is making sense, students, right? So let's do a quick recap and then move forward, right? Just a second. So that's your market. So that's your market demand curve, right? At $700 of wage rate, your total, the total demand for market, the total demand for labor in the market would be 7. How so? Because at 700 wage rate, Tommy wants to hire 3 people. You can see for yourself. And at wage rate of $700, Levi's wants to hire 4 people. So 4 plus 3 makes a total of 7. Similarly, at wage rate of $600, Levi's wants to hire 5 people. Yes or no? And Tommy wants to hire 4 people. So 5 plus 4 gives you 9, right? So at the wage rate of $600, the total demand for labor in the market would be, at $600 wage rate, the total demand for labor in the market would be how much? 9 people. Easy. We good on this, and so on and so forth. On the wages graph, y-axis represents marginal revenue per hour of labor as well, right? Okay, now why I did not write that, that's a good question. Okay, Preet, let me quickly show you the question that we're doing over here. Students, have a look at this quickly. So this is the question that we're doing right now, and the A part of this. Explain whether there is a link between the marginal revenue product of labor and the wage rate in an occupation, right? So it's talking about that what's the connection between marginal revenue product of labor and the wage rate that is being paid. So in simple words, let's put it down like this. How much revenue Qasim Shamim, how much revenue Qasim generates for the company where he works, and how that determines the wage that I will be paid as a teacher. Again, I repeat, who am I? I'm a teacher, right? So how much revenue I generate for the company online teaching business where I work, that is my marginal revenue product of labor. And how is this marginal revenue that I'm generating for the company affects the wage that I will earn, right? That's what it's asking for. Now, the assumption that we, the calculation and everything, all the graphs that you can see on the screen right now, right? We assume that there are two companies. We are talking about production workers who manufacture clothing. Could be a pair of jeans, could be pair of, could be t-shirts, could be anything, right? Now, how much would be the total demand in the market for these workers will be based on the individual firm's demand. Which are the individual firms? Companies that manufacture clothes, right? So we took the example that there are only two companies, Levi's and Tommy, and we then constructed their graphs, individual firms' demand for labor, right? And what are these graphs showing? These graphs are showing us that at certain marginal revenue, like how much revenue the first guy at Levi's generated, how much revenue the second guy generated at Levi's, and similarly the third guy, and the fourth guy and fifth and so on, right? And then we did the same for Tommy, right? Right, exactly. Now, coming to your question, Mubin. So your question is that why am I writing marginal revenue product of labor on the individual firm's demand for labor, and why am I writing the wages on the market demand for labor? So the answer is fairly simple. Now, since we will be determining the wages in the market demand for labor, so that's why I've written wages. That's why I've written wages. I could have written marginal revenue product of labor, but it's not adding much value here, because this is the total demand in the market for production workers. Is this clear so far? Okay, now I'll tell you what next you need to add on the graph to determine the wages. Now, how much, listen to me very carefully, students. How much is the total supply of labor in this market? Meaning by, so if these are the two firms that manufacture clothes in Pakistan or any other country, how many, what is supply? Supply, on the other hand, is the number of people who are willing and able to work in production factories, clothing production factories. The number of people available in our country who are willing to work in production factories to produce clothes, that is the total supply of this type of workers. 11. What do you mean by 11? At 500, you're saying? Yeah, at 500, the total demand for labor would be, yeah. So if that's what your question is, yeah, at the wage rate of $500, the total demand for labor in the market would be 11, because we can just, verify from the graph. Right, so that would be, just a second. Right, so at the wage rate of $500, right? How many units is Levi's want to hire? 6. How many units of labor is Tommy willing to hire? 5 plus 6 is 11, right? Easy. Okay, now think about this. Did everyone get this last part or not, right? So what's the supply? Supply is the total number of people. Labor supply is the total number of people who are willing and able to work at a certain wage rate, right? Now, when you see where the labor supply in the market supply of labor is intersecting with the market demand for labor, that's where your wage rate is. That's where your wage rate is. Students, are you following me? So labor supply curve is always upward sloping. Why? Because higher the wage, more the people willing to work. Higher the wage, more the people willing to work, right? That should be obvious and simple, right? So upward sloping is your market supply of labor. Upward sloping is your market supply. Just a second. Upward sloping is your market supply for labor, and downward sloping is your This is upward sloping is your market supply of labor, and this downward sloping was the market demand for labor. So where the two are intersecting, that is your wage rate. This shows what? That the wage rate of $700 will be paid to every worker. Now, this is very important point. Students, please pay attention. So every production workers hired in these factories, Levi's and Tommy, would be paid a wage rate of how much? $700. And what's the total quantity of labor that will be hired in the market? 7 people. The total number of people hired in the market would be $700. So sorry, 7 people, at each person being paid $700 each. Easy. Any confusion so far, students? Preet, Amna, Mubin, are all of you absolutely clear on this? Right? So if this is clear, then we'll keep moving forward. Right? So that was the A part of the question, and the B part of the question. What is the B part? Okay. Now let's do the B part. The price of a firm's product, is above the average total cost. Discuss whether the firm should stop production if its price falls. So the firm's price is above the average total cost. Discuss whether the firm should stop production if its price falls. Okay, now think about this, students. Let's think of a market structure. What market structure is coming to your mind? Anyone? What market structure is coming to your mind, students?
So could you repeat the question?
I can definitely repeat the question. I will look at this. Let's look at this question one more time. The question, here's the question. The price of firm's product is above the average total cost. So the price that the firm is currently charging for its products, that's higher than the average total cost of that firm, right? Discuss whether the firm should stop production if its price falls. So should the company stop its production if its price falls? Are you getting me? Okay. Now, students, think about this. Amna, did you get the question, or do you want me to explain more?
No, I got it.
Okay. Now, students, think about this. Now, listen to this very carefully, right? The idea is first things first, right? What is average? Now, think about this. Total cost is simple. What is total cost? Total cost is fixed cost plus variable cost. Or in much simpler words, total cost is the total expenses that firms faces in producing a certain product. Am I right with this or not? Right? So the total cost that a firm faces in producing something, that's known as total cost, right? Total expenses that you faced in producing something. Now, when you divide that total cost with the output, so total cost divided by output will give you what? Right? So that will give you average total cost is equals to total cost divided by this sign. This slash means divided by output, right? So total cost is in the numerator, output is in the denominator. That gives you average total cost. Any confusion so far, right? Sorry. We good on this, right? Okay. Now moving forward, exactly. What is average total cost actually showing us? We do know the formula. We know how to calculate it. Great. But we also need to know what exactly is this showing us. So average total cost shows us the cost of producing a typical unit of the good. Cost of producing a unit of the good is known as average total cost. Any confusion so far? Anything that wasn't clear? Right? Okay. Now let's say, let's take an example of cell phone producing company, right? A cell phone producing company, Samsung's average total cost is, right? How much? 30,000 rupees, right? That means that a typical cell phone at Samsung costs them 30,000 rupees, right? Yes or no? Okay. Now, if they sell that product anything more, if they sell their product for anything more than 30,000, my question to you is, will they make a profit? Will they make a loss? Will they break even? What? Right? So if the average total cost of any firm is 30,000, let's say Samsung, they'll make a profit. Exactly. Excellent. Now, students, think about this. Profit is simply speaking what you save. What you save after paying your expenses. I repeat myself. After paying your expenses from the revenue, whatever amount the company saves, that is what its profit is. Right? Now think about this. If a typical unit is costing 30,000 and a typical unit of cell phone, Samsung, Samsung cell phone is being sold for something more than 30,000, right? So you're selling it for, let's say, 35,000. The cost of producing that is 30. So on each unit, perhaps, let's say you're making 5,000 rupees of profit. Yes or no, right? So the idea is that as long as, right, as long as the firm's price is higher than its average total cost, it will be making a profit. Easy? Any confusion so far, right? And obviously, if it's less than that, then it's a loss. And if the price is exactly equals to ATC, then it's a break even, because you're just selling it for the same amount as much it costs you to produce it, right? So if you're producing it for 30,000 rupees and you're selling it for 30,000 rupees, you make no profit, no loss. Any confusion so far, students? Are we clear on this? But that is where it becomes a little complicated. In the short run, the company will not close. This is what the long run was, right? If you remember, we even did that in previous classes. By the way, before we move forward, do share your email addresses with me so that I can share all the notes with you. This is Amna. Amna, this is your email address. Can you see my screen? So I'm adding Amna. Mubin, may I have your email address, please? Mubin. I think that was the one, right? Preet, what is your email address? Preet, right? Are these correct email addresses?
Yes. Sir, over here in this question, would we be discussing perfect competition or monopolistic competition?
I'll tell you. No, because this criteria is same for all the businesses, regardless. Just give me a second. Let me show you one more thing before we move forward. By the way, this is not the complete set of notes that I've shared with you, right? These are only the new notes. If you want to access my previous notes, what you have to do, just open the mega lecture. Did you see what I did? Right? So you go to the mega lecture website, right? You just type on Google mega lecture. The first link that will show up would be of our website, right? Okay, so you go here and then you go in notes and worksheets, the first option, right? Notes and worksheets. You click on that, you keep scrolling down, you come to economics and it says economics by Qasim Shamil, right? You just click on that and you'll find all the other notes as well. And you can just simply download. There will be an option of download. You can just download, save it on your laptop, phone, wherever, right? For later use, right? These notes will be up till your exam, so you don't need to worry about it. But if you want to store and save it, save these right now, you may do that. You just click on the download. These are AS, you don't need those. These are the A2, right? So this IGCSE, you don't need sample answers to economic papers. So there's a lot of content. You can just go and scroll at your own convenience and do that. Okay, now coming to your question, Amna, no. Think about this criteria, because think about it, profit, if you remember, okay, let me repeat this again. The cost graphs, if you remember, I did tell you that the shape of cost graphs is the same for all businesses, regardless of the market structure. So whether you are operating in monopoly, or you're operating in monopolistic competition, or you're operating in perfect competition, have you noticed, right, that all of these firms have same type of cost graphs, right? So, I mean, if you look at the ATC, it's always U-shaped. Yes or no? If you look at the ATC for any business, right, whether that be monopoly, whether that be monopolistic competition, whether that be perfect competition, or whether that be oligopoly, all four market structures that we studied as part of our syllabus have same cost graph, right? So ATC is always U-shaped. Marginal cost is always passing from the lowest point of the ATC. Do you remember? Marginal cost always passes. Preet would remember because he attended the cost class with me. Other students might not know this. That's why I'm sharing right now. So marginal cost will always pass from the lowest point of the ATC. Students, I'll explain you again once, we are done with this recap, right? So don't worry, we will do cost in detail. We can do that, right? Don't worry about that. But for now, you need to remember that marginal cost will always pass from the lowest point of the ATC. So it cannot pass from any other point. So for instance, marginal cost cannot be like this. Why it cannot be like this? It's a J-shaped graph. First of all, marginal cost, you would remember that it's a J-shaped graph, but it can never pass from any point apart from the lowest point of the ATC. And what's the reason for that? The reason is that it's mathematically true. it's mathematically true that the marginal cost will always pass from the lowest point of the ATC. So this one is incorrect. This one is incorrect. This one is correct, right? Got it? Right? Okay, now these are the two cost graphs that we use the most, marginal cost and ATC. Is everyone clear on this? This is productive efficiency graph in perfect competition. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So productive efficiency, Amna, by the way, productive efficiency is when you're operating on the lowest possible ATC. So if there are two possible ATC curves, so I've made another ATC as well. So if these are the two, ATC1 and let's say ATC2, if these are the two possible ATC curves for a firm, right? Then for productive efficiency to exist, you should be operating on the lower ATC curve. I repeat myself. So if there are two possible ATC curves for a firm, and if the firm wants to be productively efficient, then it should be operating on the lower ATC curve, ATC2. Yeah, that's correct. Right? Easy. But yeah,
So
you're
here
right.
we don't discuss any market
Sorry?
structure.
For any market structure, yeah.
So we don't discuss in this question market structure.
No, you don't. You don't. And that's why you don't, that's I'm explaining the reason for that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now students, think about this. Profit. Now, this is the best way to explain it. Think about this. The way Amazon is calculating its profit, right? Accounting, right? So how do we calculate profit? So there is a standard process how all businesses across the globe calculate their profit. So whether you think about Amazon, trillion-dollar company, or you think of a local shop, every business in the world calculates its profit with the same formula, with the same, with the same variables, right? So the idea is that it doesn't depend which market structure you're operating in. Are you getting me? So whether Amazon makes web services or Amazon sells products or whatever it does, or you think of a simple retail business which buys products and then sell it at a higher price to the customers. Every business in the world calculates its profit in the same way, right? Revenue minus cost, exactly, right? So coming back to the point, so the idea that I just explained you, that if the price is greater than your average total cost, if you're selling something, and this is very intuitive, think about it. How would you make a profit if you're selling something, if you're selling your product for less than the cost it takes to produce? I repeat, if you're selling a product less than the cost it takes you to produce that thing, how is that a profit? That's not a profit, right? It's only when you sell at a price higher than the ATC, you make a profit. That's by the way, but this is long run story. What is this? This is long run, students, right? In the short run, let's quickly have a look at this. In the short run, the idea is slightly different. In short run, even if you're not covering your full cost, I repeat myself, in the short run, even that would be a normal profit. Yes, Amna, that's correct. That would be a normal profit. That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. So even, yeah. True. So even if you make, sorry, yes, so that would be a normal profit. So even if you make, even if you sell your product at the price which is equals to ATC, that's good enough. That's good enough, students. Why? Because at least you will still be making some profit. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention this part. Thank you for bringing this up, right? Because it's always confusing the way we calculate profit in accounting and economics. That's a little different. So yeah, that's correct, students. Right? So Preet and Mubin, did you guys get this part? Right? So in this case, the above condition, if your price is higher, than your, right? If your price is higher than your average total cost, that would be a normal profit, right? And if your price is just equal to your, ATC, that would be normal profit, right? So let's write it down as normal. Easy. Okay, but obviously if the price is less than ATC, that's not acceptable, because that means you're selling your product for something less than what it takes you to manufacture it, and that would be a loss. Easy, we got on this. Okay. In the short run, the idea is fairly different. In short run, students, think about this. Now the idea is, in short run, you're not expecting a profit. Why? Let me tell you. A newly established business has just started operating and most probably it will be facing a lot of competition from other brands that were already up in there running before that company entered that market. Now you are facing intense competition in that market from well-established brands. Now, what do you expect in the short run? That at least if the variable cost is being covered, you are good enough to continue operating. I'll give you some specific examples and that will help you understand, right? Total. Sorry. So the total cost, as I just explained you, right? The total cost of a business is made up of two components, fixed cost and variable cost, right? So the total cost of a business is made up of two components, fixed cost and variable cost. Easy. And variable cost. Okay, think about this. What's variable cost? Variable cost is just the cost of producing that particular product. Now stay with me. Variable cost is the cost of producing that particular product. Fixed cost is the overheads. Fixed cost are the overheads. Now think about this. If you think of a pair of jeans, there's a factory that's manufacturing pair of jeans. Now I want you to identify a few expenses that this firm will be making, and you need to tell me that which of these expenses that you're telling me would be fixed and which of these expenses would be variable. Did you guys get my question or not? Right now, the question is, what I'm saying here, students, that think of a factory that manufactures jeans, right? And identify some expenses that this firm has to incur, and you have to tell me whether these expenses are fixed or variable. Or let me give you a few examples. What about the raw material, the clothing, the raw material that you use in manufacturing jeans? Would that be variable cost or fixed cost? Would that be variable cost or fixed cost? Students?
Variable.
Very good, because that's directly related to manufacturing of that good. Excellent. What about the electricity that you use to run your machines in that factory? The electricity.
Fixed.
That's
Because
fixed. Excellent, excellent, right? That's fixed because you can't really associate it with any particular product, right? That's fixed, right? Machine is up and running. Even if you're not manufacturing anything, machine would still be running. In most cases, you can't close, like you can't stop the machine. That's how it works, right? Very good. The rent of the premises, factory premises, the rent that you pay, that's again fixed, right? Because it's not directly related to production of that product. Excellent, excellent, right? And other variable expenses could be the dye that you use to fade the jeans or whatever you do, a couple of other things, the buttons that you put or the zip that you put on jeans. I mean, these are all variable costs because these are directly associated with the production of that good. The workers, yes, the wages of the workers who manufacture machines, not of the security guards, not of the security guards or not or other staff members who are not producing, but people who are directly producing that product like jeans, their salaries would be variable cost. Excellent, you guys got it. Now think about this. In the short run, the company doesn't really expect to cover its fixed cost. So even if it's just covering its variable cost, it's good enough to operate, right? Okay, now, so what's the criteria for the short run? So in the short run, the company is just expecting its price to be above, its average variable cost. To be above what? To be above its average variable cost. How many of you got this, right? Because that means that at least you are covering the cost it takes to manufacture that thing. At least you are covering the cost. The cost that it takes to manufacture that product. Now, another example I'll give you. Now, listen to this very carefully. KFC. A typical burger at KFC, I don't even know the names. Happy Meal, Zinger, perhaps that's correct. So Zinger burger cost, let's say 500 rupees in Pakistan to produce. Variable cost I'm talking about only, right? So the chicken patty that you use, the salad that you use, the bun that you use, the sauces that you use, the expenses, all their expenses, the expenses of just the ingredients used in making that burger and the people who are working on manufacturing those burgers, right? Their salaries. If that costs you 500 rupees and you're selling a burger for less than 500 rupees, would that be any useful? I repeat, just the cost.
No.
Exactly, because you will never be profitable. You're not even covering the cost that it takes to produce that burger. Are you getting me or not? But at least in the short run, if you're a new burger producing restaurant and you produce a burger for 500 rupees and you're selling for 600 rupees, at least you're saving 100 rupees on each burger, which you can then pay towards your fixed cost. Which you can then pay towards your fixed cost. Are you students getting me? So in the short run, any business, I repeat, let's sum this up. In short run, for any business, as long as the price is greater than average variable cost, that's good enough for you to operate. In short run, for any business, if the price is greater than its average variable cost, you're good enough to operate. But in the long run, you at least in the long run, that firm would at least want its price to be equal to ATC to make a normal profit. But obviously, if the price is even greater than the ATC, then it will make a normal profit, which is even better. So coming back to the question, quickly to show you the question again. So the question was saying that will the company stop producing if its price is less than its average total cost? The answer to this is yes, if it's, sorry, if now in this, what you will say that if the price is less than the average total cost, you need to see whether it's a short run or a long run. If it's a long run and the price is just equal to the ATC, if it's a long run and the price is just equal to ATC, even then you will continue operating because you are at least making normal profit. Normal profit is just enough profit that your competitors are making. So you're good enough, you'll continue operating. And if it's a short run, you can even set a price lower than the ATC, given that price is at least higher than the average variable cost. If it's a short run that the firm is operating in. So even if the price is less than the ATC, that's not a problem as long as that price is greater than the average variable cost. Following me, students? Is this making sense? Okay, so we'll stop here for today. Preet, for tomorrow, if you can tell us which topic you want us to. Okay, so he's not in class. So students, I did tell you that for the last few days, I'll be asking Preet if there are any topics that he wants to cover, because after 24th, we will have more than 2 months to do every topic in detail. So for now, what I want you, Amna and Mubin, to just list down all the topics that you are having problem with. By the way, this question is clear. The B part, is this clear, students, right?
Yes, sir.
Very nice, very nice. So for now, I want you to just keep listing down the topics that you're struggling with, so that after 24th of February, very nice, very nice. So after 24th of February, we'll do all those topics in detail. Could be market structures, could be cost, could be anything, right? But for now, since Preet has his exam on 24th, so I'll be asking him what topics he's struggling with, right? So I'll see you tomorrow at the same time, right? Take care.